guys? Today we are going to be tying some streamers. Fall is right around the corner, and the fall is the time to use big streamers to catch big trout. It is currently 12:30 in the AM, and I can't sleep, so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to show you guys how to tie one of my favorite big streamers for the fall. And when I say big streamers, I'm not talking a size 4 woolly bugger. You can ask a lot of the guys in the shop, and a lot of them know I like to fish big streamers. I'm not obsessed with streamers throughout the whole year. I love to dry fly fish, I nymph fish a lot, but come the fall, I like to fish big streamers. And when I say big streamers, I'm talking streamers like this. Now, see this? When you're pulling up a fly box that big, you know you're dealing with some really big flies. And by big streamers, I mean stuff like this. Alright, a big heifer groomer, big stuff like big sex dungeons, and yes, that's what they're called. Kelly Gallup is a crazy guy. Just big, nasty honking flies. So today we're going to sit down and I'm going to show you how to tie one of Kelly Gallup's most effective flies and one of my favorite flies, Kelly Gallup's Peanut Envy. This guy right here. You can tie this in a variety of sizes and colors. I really fish it 99% of the time. I fish it in a size 4. We'll get into hooks in a little bit, when we actually start tying. But I think you guys are gonna like this fly. I know that once you start fishing them, if you give these big flies a try, you'll notice you're not gonna catch a lot of fish, but the fish that you catch are usually quite large. Put it that way. So hope you guys enjoy it, and let's get tying. All right, here we go. Like I said, we're gonna discuss hooks. The original Gallup pattern calls for a 3 to 4x long streamer hook on the back and a traditional 2x long nymph hook for the front hook. Like I said, this is an articulated pattern. Me personally, I've decided to stop messing around and worrying about that kind of stuff. I just tie with size 4 300s. These are TCO size 4 300s, so that's a 6x long streamer hook. So like I said, I just tie with 2 of them. It makes a big fly, but like I said, the whole reason I do this articulated stuff is because I like really big flies. Material wise, it's pretty straightforward. For the tail and for the wings on each one, which you'll see in a little bit, it'll make sense. We're going to be using some black marabou. We're going to also be using a little bit of pearl crystal flash. I know this one's kind of a mess. I've been using it for a while. So we're going to mix that in with the tail. For the body, we're using some purple UV ice dub. For the hackle through the fly, we're using just a little bit of strung rooster or schloppen. I'm out of black schloppen right now, so I'm just going to use some big webby strung rooster hackles on there. Then we're going to be using a large cone head, a black cone head, and you can't forget some rubber legs. Gotta love some rubber legs for these big patterns. These ones are silly legs. They're fire tip with black and purple, so it's a black body with the purple tips, as you can kind of see there. As I said, we're in my bedroom, so the lighting is not too great, so I apologize for that. Back to the old camera too, no more fancy camera in the shop. The connection, we're just going to use some beadle-on wire. You can get this, pretty easily at a lot of craft stores. It's not too expensive. And then we're just going to use some killer caddis beads and pearl, some larger ones, to keep the 2 hooks from fouling. So let's get started. Oh, and the thread, I'm sorry. The thread, just using some black 6/0. I prefer to use something like 100 denier or so gel spun, but also out of that I've been tying quite a few big streamers, so we're just going to stick with the 6/0. With this pattern, you're not spinning any deer hair or anything, so it's not too much of a big deal. So this is going to be the back hook. Like I said, this is a size 4 Tiemco or TCO 100. So we're just going to start our thread, work our way back, grab our scissors, cut that, work our way back to about the bend of the hook. Then we're going to grab some marabou, and just kind of pick through, find a nice big fluffy blood quill marabou feather, and we're going to tie that in. If I can just get one out of this strung pack of marabou. There we go. So like I said, just grab that, kind of sweep that out like that, and tie that in about half a shank length. It's not really too important. As my good friend Steve Spurgeon, who I mentioned in one of my other videos, always tells me with streamer fishing, if there was ever a time in trout fishing that it really just didn't matter, it would be streamer fishing. A lot of these fish are you're just evoking a predatory response from these fish, so they're just going to lash out and grab at just about anything they can. Especially with these big flies too. Kind of a fight or flight response, I like to think, with some of these big flies, and that's one of the reasons I like to fish them. So next we're just going to grab our little crystal flash here, just 2 strands of the pearl, and then I'm going to double those strands over like this, even up the tips so you can tie them in without it slipping out, and just wrap back over them. A lot of times people complain about their flash slipping out. It's not too much of an issue. Actually, it's really never an issue when you do it this way. Trim the flash a little bit longer than the tail. Then we are going to grab our saddle hackles, and I'm just going to pick through and find a short, stubby, and fat and webby hackle here. There we go. That should work. Okay, so like I said, it's real, as you can see, it's really wide and webby. So we're just going to go ahead and tie that in by the tip. So usually just strip that off like that, and just, have the rest start stroking your fibers back. And go ahead and tie this in. Alright, I'm going to stroke the rest of those fibers back like this now. That makes it a little bit easier to excuse me, a little bit easier to palmer that forward. Now we're just going to take some UV ice dub, and I'll tell you what, you're going to use a lot. And a few of the other videos that I've done, I guess, I've mentioned that with dubbing you don't need a whole lot. Well, with streamers you're going to go through a lot of dubbing, especially ice dub. It dubs on pretty coarsely, and it doesn't really want to spread out too well for you like traditional dubbing, so you're going to use quite a good bit of it. And just build up a nice long dubbing brush kind of deal, and start that right there, and wrap forward. Again, don't have to be too precise with it, kind of just wrap it up, get some more dubbing. Dub that up, get that even, keep going, and that should be perfect. Yeah, right. So I like to leave about an eye length right there so I can have room to tie in the rest of the stuff, and that'll make sense in a little bit. Then we're just going to go back and grab that hackle feather and palmer this forward, and just kind of try to keep the wraps even. You don't want to have too much space in between them, or they start to look a little bit goofy. And just as you go, just stroke those fibers back so you keep from trapping any underneath your wraps coming forward. Right? Get to about there, do one more wrap, stroke everything back out of the way, and come up with our thread and tie that off like that. That up, trim that. What we're going to do next is we're going to grab some of our silly legs. Let me just find them. And right now a lot of you are thinking, my god, that looks exactly like a woolly bugger. And that's pretty much what the back of it is. But you'll notice soon that it's going to start to change in the next few steps here. So now you're going to grab 2 silly legs. I usually just pull them right off so that they're still connected. They're easy to work with. They're still connected together. They come in kind of a sheet looking thing with the ends still connected. Great camera work on my part, I know. So what you're going to do is just kind of pinch those silly legs in the middle, kind of even them out on both sides. And what I like to do is lay down 1 or 2 loose wraps, then pull the silly legs and cinch down tight. That way you're not having a, when you pull them tight, it gives you a lot smaller, neater tie down. Do the same thing as you stretch them across to bring them down both sides evenly. And just kind of build up a little bit of a thread head right there. And as you can see, you have two sets of evenly hanging silly legs. Now what we're going to do is go back to our marabou and find another nice big plume out of this. Just get it out. Alright. That looks pretty good there. What we're going to do is measure that out like this, so that it's a little bit longer than the body of the fly, like so. Okay. And we're going to just tie that in right there. And again, a couple loose wraps to get it in place. Marabou usually doesn't tie in too pretty for you sometimes. Then kind of cinch down on those wraps. Try to trim that marabou as close as you can without cutting your thread. Not that I've ever done that before, ever. So then we're going to build up a thread head right over the top there. Again, doesn't have to be super neat. This is kind of just me being anal retentive about my fly tying. And we're going to just throw a whip finish right there. Alright, just like that. And we're going to whip and clip, as they say. Then kind of just leave the legs hanging. Trim off the ends so that they're separated like that. And now, as you can see, you have 2 little sets of legs hanging. And there's the rear of your fly. Now, the reason that I've left this zoomed out so much is for the next portion of the fly here. You'll be able to see what I'm doing a little bit more clearly. And I figured that with this hook it was large enough that you could still see it without having to be kind of your face glued to the fly. Okay, now we're going to take our second size 4 300, run a large cone head over the front of that, toss that on there like that. Make sure that's nice and tight. Alright, then we are going to start our thread right behind the cone and kind of just work back, cut off that thread. Now for the connection, a lot of guys seem to get a little bit worked up just because they hear articulated and they think it's really complicated. So here's what we're going to do. Take off a little bit of wire, about 6 or so inches, old pair of wire cutters, snip said wire, just like that. Okay, we're going to lay that down in front of us. We're going to grab 2 of our beads here. 2 to 3, I mean, well, really 1 to 4, depending upon your preference. I find that 2 gives me a good balance of action without fouling a whole bunch. So, grab our rear fly like this, slip, watch that, there you go, slip that wire through the eye of the hook, even up the ends of the wire like that. You can kind of see that. And I like to pull on that just a little bit, kind of puts a little bit of a crease in that wire. Grab your 2 beads and slip them over the wire. There's 1, and there's 2 down there. Alright, and now you can see that it's just hanging like that. You can use any color bead you want to match up with your color scheme. Like I said, you can tie this in a bunch of colors. I mentioned that earlier. I found that black and purple, black and red, straight olive, and then things like olive and gold, olive and copper are really effective color variations. So get creative with and try whatever you want. I use the pearl beads for just about all of them, just because I find that it matches everything, and that way I don't have to go sit and digging through even more stuff. I have more than enough flat tie materials to last me for the next 15,000 lifetimes. So, keeping things simple makes it easier for me. So now, we're just gonna tie in that wire. Just tie it in right at the bend of the hook, and kind of work your way forward. I like to just do a loose wrap and then push forward with my fingers to make sure I keep that wire on top of the shank. And then now on the way back, I'm really going to crank down on that. Again, this is the one nice thing about using gel spun as opposed to the plain 6/0 uni I'm using right now. The gel spun makes really putting some real pressure on this wire a little bit easier. Now we're going to fold that wire back, and then again I press down to kind of put a little crimp in that. Loose wraps, go back up, tight wraps. And I do that about halfway down the length of that wire binding that I did before. We're going to trim our wire and then wrap really loosely over that cut, because that cut wire is quite sharp and will break your thread. Again, like I said, not that I've ever done that before, just I've heard that it might break your thread. So we're going to go back to the end of our thread there, right about there. We're going to grab yet another marabou plume. I usually like this one to be a little bit shorter and thicker than the others. And we're just going to tie this in right up at the top like that, and put a loose wrap or two there, adjust the marabou, and then really cinch down. Alright, so now you'll see that those beads kind of force that. Once I cut it, you'll be able to see it. So those beads kind of force that puff up and around the beads, which is exactly what you want. You want just a little thick little tail to kind of cover up that connection, and it kind of flows. When it's wet, it'll flow seamlessly into that wing of the other fly. Now we're going to go back to our strung rooster saddles and find another big, thick, webby feather like that. Again, nice and webby, thick. Tie it in by the tip, and repeat the process from the first part of the fly for that back hook. Alright, wrap to the back, grab some more of that ice dub, and like I said, the nice thing about this fly is that between the numerous colors of marabou that are offered, and the basically unlimited number of colors of ice dub that you can achieve from blending different colors, you can really get creative and do a whole lot of different color variations, and just have fun with it and figure out what works best for you. So again, we're gonna just dub up the body like that. Grab another nice big pinch here. We're going to continue to dub up to the very end. You gotta get even some more. As I said, with ice dub on these patterns, you go through a bunch of it. So next time you're in the shop, if you're interested in tying, pick up more than one pack, because it will go. Wrap up to right at the bead there. Alright, just like that. We're going to wrap our hackle forward. You sit in those even wraps. Kinda make sure you stroke all those fibers out of the way. Just keep going up to the front. I get to right at the bead here and make another wrap. Grab our thread and tie up right behind the bead here. Okay. We're going to trim this. We're going to get that taken care of. Back to the marabou for one last time. Grab a big bundle
a really nice big thick plume like this. And okay, stroke it all out just like we did with the first one. Get it to be a little bit longer than the body. Tie that off, 2 loose wraps right behind the bead there. Get it lined up the way you want it. Cinch down. Trim that again, don't cut your thread. Alright. And force all that loose marabou down into right behind the bead there. That will keep everything from falling out. We're going to grab our rubber legs again, these silly legs. This time we're going to grab 3 as opposed to 2. Do the same thing. Center tie in. 2 loose wraps right behind the bead. I actually did 3 there. Stretch the rubber out. Get that nice, thin, smooth little tie-in. Again, I do this all right behind the bead to keep that bead from sliding around. Right, and you'll see it looks kind of goofy right now. Here, let's see. Looks a little bit goofy right there. This is probably a good idea to zoom in like this, but there we go. Now we're gonna go back and grab a little bit more ice dub. Not quite that much, and dub a collar right behind that cone head. Like I said, it's a little bit too loose. The hard thing about this is getting it to dub tight sometime with this ice dub. I like a pretty thick collar that I can really try to force down underneath that cone so it's not moving anywhere. Just like that. Alright, whip finish right behind the cone so you're not ruining that nice job you